Good afternoon, Washington, D.C. This is Tony Browder. Welcome to another edition of the Browder File Show here on WPFW, your station for jazz, news, information, and so much more. So we've got a wonderful show in store for you today. But let me begin by just getting some things off my mind. You know, my life has been filled with aphorisms. An aphorism is a pithy observation that contains a general truth, such as a stitch in time saves nine, or if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So if an aphorism contains a general truth, and if the truth sets you free, then here's an aphorism that I trust will set some of you all free, particularly those of you all who are ready to be freed. I thought of it this morning, and I want to share it with you now. So here goes. It's been said that the three most important days in a person's life are: one, the day that they were born; two, the day they realize why they are born; and three, the day that they realize that they have been born before. Now, let me say that again. Three most important days in a person's life are the day that they were born, the day that they realize why they were born, and the day that they realize that they have been born before. Now, this is my truth. It's a personal truth that I feel doesn't have to be validated by fear or ignorance or political, social, or religious dogma. This personal truth has been validated in my life by three events which all occurred during the month of September. For example, on September the 15th, 1989, I sponsored the Elders Symposium at the University of the District of Columbia. This event featured three giants, three heroes of mine: John G. Jackson, John Henry Clark, and Yosef Ben Yuckanan. And over 1,000 people came out to hear these giants speak at the University of the District of Columbia 36 years ago this past Monday. That event was one of the proudest moments in my career. The second September milestone occurred on September the 21st, 2008. That was when, in Washington, D.C., I formally introduced the Assar Restoration Project, which is the first excavation of tombs in Egypt financed by African Americans. These two events were set in motion by an event that occurred 41 years ago. And that was on September the 26th through the 30th in 1984 at Morehouse College. I was in attendance of the Nile Valley Conference. The Nile Valley Conference was a convening of 14 scholars from various disciplines who presented information on the African origins of Nile Valley Civilization, particularly the civilization known as Kemet or Ancient Egypt. And I sat in that audience, a 33-year-old impressionable young man, and I hung on every single word that every presenter presented over the course of that conference. And while I was there, I had an epiphany. And as I watched these speakers, I decided at that moment that that's what I wanted to do with my life. I wanted to gain knowledge about Nile Valley Civilization and share that information with my community. And I also decided that I wanted to bring some of these people to Washington, D.C. and share them with the community that I love. And so I started the Free Your Mind lecture series in 1987, and I brought many of these speakers that I met at the Nile Valley Conference to Washington, D.C. I brought Asa Hilliard. I brought Naeem Akbar, Ivan Van Sertima, Runoko Rashidi, LeGrand Clegg, Hunter Adams, and many others. And between 1987 and 1993, we sponsored over 60 presentations that I think to some extent helped to transform the consciousness of Washington, D.C. One of the speakers I brought here to D.C. on multiple occasions, and this person was also one of the conveners of the Nile Valley Conference. His name is Dr. Charles Finch. Charles Finch and his wife, Ellen, were to have been my guests on last week's show, but something came up and we decided to reschedule them for my show on October the 1st, 2 weeks from today. Well, it just so happened that the guest I had scheduled for today is currently on his way back to the United States from Senegal and told me Sunday that he wouldn't be able to attend or participate in today's show. So I made a call, and I'm pleased to announce that my guests today are Charles and Ellen Finch. So let me give you a little background information, just a little background information about the Finches. Charles Finch is a retired physician and a brilliant Nile Valley scholar. He is the person, he is the person who convinced me about a decade ago that I had been here before. And we're going to talk about that, right? Ellen Finch is also a retired medical professional. She and Charles have been married for 53 years. And in my humble opinion, Ellen is the power behind the Finch throne. So, Charles and Ellen, Ellen and Charles, welcome to the Browder File Show. How are you?
Thank you.
Thank you. But Tony, I don't call you Tony. You
You
know
just
that.
did.
No, yeah, I did, just so people know who I'm talking about before, because I'm never going to use that name again for the rest of the
Okay.
program. I call him Karakamoon, and he can tell you who Karakamoon is. Karakamoon was chief priest of Amun in the 25th dynasty of ancient Kemet, the 25th dynasty coming from Ethiopia. And Karakamoon, otherwise known as Tony Browder, became a co-excavator with Elena Pishikova because she is a Russian, what do you call it, a
Russian
Russian
born.
excavator,
Hmm.
yeah. But she had gotten to a certain point and couldn't go any further because she just didn't have any funding. But she met Karak there in Egypt. Karak, when you hear me say Karak, that's what I'm talking about, Tony. She met Karak there in Egypt and explained to him what problems she was having, what her issues were. And he just said, "Don't worry about it. I'll find the money." And you know what he did? He went back to he found the money within a matter of a couple of weeks. That's him. That's what he does. And kept her program going and also funded all the things that he's been doing because he's no longer, he himself has become an archaeologist over time, working with Elena Pichikova and others. That's the thing about archaeology. Archaeology started out that way in Egypt. It wasn't academic. You didn't go to classes. You went out into the field and started digging. Like, oh gosh, what was his name?
Petrie, Flanders Petrie. He's
Yeah,
considered the
William
father of
Flinders
archaeology.
Petrie.
Hmm.
And and that's what Karak did. And that's the sort of life-giving uh, support that he gave Elena Pichikova. I was right, right? I said the
Yeah, yeah,
right name,
yeah, yeah, yeah. You're
right?
right. You're right.
um, um, and it's been and he has become an important figure. He has become an important figure in Egyptology. You may not have heard of him, but he's done things that nobody else has done.
So
And so,
listen, let's elaborate on this point that I made earlier in my intro about you convincing me of the reality of reincarnation. Because you put that thought in my head. You kept drilling that thought in my head. You're Karakaman, you're Karakaman. And I kept rejecting it because I thought it was somewhat egotistical. But over the years, you kept reinforcing that thought. And I've come to embrace it. I've come to stare it in the face. And as a result, I now realize that the things that have happened to me throughout my life, the things that I've done in my life, could not have been done without the assistance of knowledge gained from previous lifetimes, and also the support of ancestors who worked through us, and of course, people like yourself who were there to provide encouragement and support on multiple levels. So, who I am and what I am, I owe to you, my friend. So I'm glad to have you here on the show, and welcome.
Well, what can I say?
It's not very often that you're speechless. That was a moment that I will remember. The great Charles Finch was speechless.
Remember
So
now,
look,
let me just say this,
yes.
Rock. Uh, I was given this name in Senegal about 10 or 15 years. The name, this was among from the Serer people of Senegal. There are five major ethnic groups in Senegal, and one of them is Serer. Because there was a time when I was going back and forth to Senegal like once or twice a year for about 10, 15 years. And I was just with these uh, with these Serer traditional healers. And I was working with them and interacting with them, and one day I don't know where I was sitting. I was just sitting somewhere, and they kept pointing at me and talking to each other. I didn't know what to make of it. I just okay. They just kept pointing, and then finally they said, "Come here." And then you know what they said? They said, "You," meaning me, are Wagan Phi. And I had no idea what the significance was of that was until they told me Wagan Phi was the first king
Mm,
of the Serer as a nation going back to the 14th century. And I was dumbfounded. I'm still
mm.
kind of dumbfounded by that. And
So,
so I got that. They gave me that name. And even now, I start, I often will correct people like you. I'm Wagan Phi. And I'm Wagan Phi. And boy, talking about carrying a name proudly.
hmm
I've
hmm
always carried, especially in Senegal. People in Senegal don't know me by any other name.
That's wonderful. So they're acknowledging the fact that the spirit of this 14th century king lives in you, that you are a continuation of his energy, of his life force, of his
Well, I
essence.
hadn't thought of it like, well, I guess when you think about it, yeah, that must be
Yeah.
right. But it,
You,
it took me
you
a
know,
while to process that,
well,
Karak.
see, that's the thing. We in the West have been socialized to think that we have one life, we live it, we die, and that's it. But in other parts of the world, particularly throughout most of Africa, they have this understanding that there is no death, that death is a doorway, and that the body is temporary, the spirit, the soul, they're both eternal, and the soul then comes back into a new body, and a child is born, and the birth of that child is the continuation of an ancestor, right? And so names are given to that child to help that child remember who they were and what they are to accomplish in this particular lifetime. And it's a cycle that goes on continuously. With that, with that understanding, with that mindset, it lets us know that we don't have a life, we have a continuum of lives. And knowing that allows us to tap into the knowledge that we acquired over previous lives, which allows us to do what some people consider to be impossible things. That's the only way I can explain, lives like yours, and to some extent lives like mine, and lives like Van Sertima and many of the other people who have shaped the consciousness of the world. This is not just happening by happenstance. It's part of a larger order that unfortunately is not a part of the thinking of people in Western societies. But once you get to Africa, it's a different thinking, it's a different world.
I just want to tell your audience, did you hear this? Did you hear Karak? Karak, that's why I call him Karak Moon. He has, I knew him when he sat there in that audience at the first Nile Valley Conference, didn't know nothing, nothing. But now, he has fundamentally become an Egyptologist on his own effort, by his own study, by his own association. He goes back and forth to Egypt 2 or 3 times a year, maybe more. I've lost track. And he is the first, I call him the first African American Egyptologist there was or is. I don't know another one.
Okay.
I don't even know an African Egyptologist. Now, Karak,
Well, yes,
don't
you do.
wait, you got to let me
You
get
know
this out.
Binga. and
Huh?
you
Yeah, but
know
I'm talking about
Obenga.
African Americans.
Okay, okay, all right. So
Okay,
look,
yeah.
enough about me. Enough about
No, no,
me.
wait a minute. No, I
I'm here
want to
to
finish
interview
this. We
you.
got, yeah, it's your show, and I want to finish it
Okay, thank
because,
you.
uh, um, and so you see, I have watched him. Is the word evolve,
Yeah.
become somebody else, somebody with somebody greater, if you might say. He knows as much Egyptology as anyone, and he knows how to teach it. He knows how to present it. Um, and so, yeah, when he talks, listen, because you're talking to somebody who has had tremendous on-site experience, not just reading books. I've done a lot of reading in Egyptology, and I've been to Egypt I think 13 or 14 times. But I haven't been there as frequently as Karak. I call him Karak now. You hear me say Karak this and Karak that, or Karak, that's who I'm talking about. The man you know is Tony Browder, and I can't call him Tony anymore.
All right. So can I get back to my show and conduct my interview with you? All right.
Yeah, but I'm talking about you, so it is your show.
Well, look, let's do this. We've talked around it. Let's do a little deeper dive about the Nile Valley Conference. Tell our listeners how that significant event came about 41 years ago.
Yeah, you think I would know that, but okay. By that at that time, I was closely involved and entwined with the career of one Ivan van Sertima. There are people among your audience who know who this is. He wrote the book. He's from Guyana, uh, and he wrote the book. They came before Columbus, the African presence in the early Americas, and that is a classic. Uh, Not only just for the what the information that is imparted, but he had this really fluid style of writing. So it was fascinating to read. And I know that one time, and then one time, no, right after that, in fact, no, excuse me, let me get everything straight. Then I saw a copy of his first, they came, no,
Journal of African
Journal of
Civilization.
African Civilization.
Hmm.
And I was so impressed by that that I actually wrote him and then just tell him how much it had impacted me, how effective it was, and I talked about it, and my how it affected my involvement in Egyptology, if you will. And that was to me that was that. I was just sort of expressing my, mm, I was especially kind of expressing my gratitude, but also my admiration. 1 week later, the phone rang. This was we were here in Atlanta, but we were living in a different place. We weren't in Atlanta. Where were we?
We were in Raleigh.
Oh, we were in Raleigh, North Carolina. And I picked up the phone. Dr. Finch, this is Ivan von Sertima. I almost dropped the phone. I couldn't believe it. But there was something, he was impressed by the letter I wrote. And he asked me, I think I signed it Charles S. Finch, 3rd MD. So he knew I was a doctor. So he said, "Oh, will you write an article on the history of African medicine?" I almost fainted at that. And I said, yeah, sure. It meant that I had to go and I had to do, excuse some, you know, research, of course, more research, but I did. He published it in the Journal of African Civilizations, and I ended up having about 10 more articles
Yeah.
in the Journal of African Civilizations. And I became a personal friend of Van Sertima's because I invited him down to Morehouse College. He came down for that. And on behalf of the King Chapel and Lawrence Carter, who was the dean of the King Chapel. And anyway, my relationship with him just grew over the years. And now,
This is actually the history of the book, the newest book.
Hmm.
This is how it got started.
Okay.
Talking
Well,
about
we're gonna
Nile.
talk about the new book in a minute, but I
Hmm.
was
Okay.
just interested in how
The
and you do
conference.
talk in the book about you all coming together and the events that led to the Nile Valley Conference. But I'm just imagining, I think in terms of how that event impacted me. But when I think about the fact that you all had the mayor of Atlanta involved, the president of Morehouse College, you made the arrangements to bring in all of these scholars, these powerhouses, and the keynote speaker for that initial conference was to have been Sheikh Anta Diop, right?
Oh, that's right.
Um,
It was supposed to be. It was.
yeah,
Mhm.
But what happened was, first of all, Sheikh Anta Diop uh, was problematic in his own country
yes.
because he was no neo-colonialist, and um, Semdu Senghor didn't like it, and in fact, he tried to tell Diop, "Look, why don't you just concentrate on your scholarship and leave all the political stuff, alone?" But Diop couldn't do that. Um, and what was I? I don't know. I was going someplace with that, but and
We'll talk about venue.
okay, well let me. I want to finish this thought. I'm trying to finish a thought
Mhm.
that I was. Uh, eh.
Well, if I can jog your memory, well, Jacques wasn't able to come. Well, the point
Oh,
that I
that's
want
right.
you
That's
to,
right.
he
That's
wasn't
right.
able to come to the conference, but you all brought him to Atlanta several months later,
Six
and that
months
was his
later.
only visit to the United States.
6 months later. You're right. I actually went and I started up. He actually Van Sertima had sent him my book,
Hmm.
and he read it. And he kind of knew who I was, and I was like that. I couldn't imagine like and he was invited to England to speak by what is his name?
Amun
Yeah,
Savasakana.
Omum Sambasakana, who
Hmm.
was also from Guyana. Both of them were from Guyana,
Ah, okay.
and he was invited to England to speak. And I says, I'm going to go. I don't think I'd met him yet, so I'm going to go and I'm going to go to England and see him at this conference. And I did. And we made a connection. And he had actually read my article.
Hmm.
I was dumbfounded, and had nothing but high praise for it. And I was saying, whoa, I didn't know what to do about that. And that was the beginning of a relationship, a deep and abiding relationship that lasted till the end of his life because he didn't live long.
Yeah, yeah.
He died at age 62.
Hmm.
Part of the big part of the problem is that, like I said, excuse me, he was not a neo-colonialist, didn't have the neo-colonialist mentality in any way. And Senghor uh, threw him into jail 4 times
Mm.
because of his activities,
Wow.
and 4 times.
Okay.
And I think his health deteriorated because of that.
Sure, because he
Because
was
as I
involved.
say, he was like 62 by the time at his death. But I got a chance to know him, and I got a
Hmm.
chance to bring him here.
Yep. You all brought him to, if I recall, you brought him to the States. He was given an honorary
Degree.
PhD from Morehouse. And then, if I'm not mistaken, you brought him to, he came to DC and spoke, and then he
Yep.
went out to Chicago. Was it Chicago? And then somewhere in California he spoke, and that was his only visit to the States. And then he passed away several months later.
And you know what he did when he got back uh, across the Atlantic Ocean? He told every single person that he knew in France and Senegal about his trip
Mm,
because he had never been treated like that.
mm.
He had never been given that,
Celebrated.
huh?
Hmm. He
That's
never
right.
been celebrated for the genius that he
Yeah,
was.
that had never happened to him.
Hmm.
And he never forgot it.
Okay. Let
And
me
he
tell.
now he never forgot it. He never stopped talking about it.
Well, let me tell my listeners that you're listening to the Browder File Show, and my guests this afternoon are Charles Finch and Ellen Finch. And I would like to bring Ellen into the conversation. Yes, Ellen, I want to bring you into the conversation because I've known you guys for quite a while, and what I've noticed is that there are very few African American couples who work together doing this work. I can think of W.B. Du Bois and his wife Shirley. I can think of Nathan and Julian Hare. I can think of Roz and Lynn Jeffries, Patsy Joe and Asa Hilliard, uh, Ivan and Jackie Van Sertima, Wade and Vera Nobles, and you two have been joined at the hip for decades. Ellen, please tell me and our listeners, how have you all been able to sustain yourself while raising a family and doing this work?
7 children, by the way.
Seven children, seven. Well, that makes it even more impressive. So if I can ask the power behind the throne to
Right.
share with us
Good to
her
see you,
secrets.
No. Well, I really wasn't involved until um, much later. I was not involved in the Nile Valley Conference, nor did I have anything to do with bringing Jill to the United States,
Mhm.
except to make a dinner.
Yes.
Um,
She had a Jopian dinner.
but before that, I was pretty much tied up with my family, and I think I made one appearance at the Nile Valley Conference. That was all I could manage. So I really didn't get involved until um, after his first book came out,
And when
and
was that?
that's the book
Was that Echoes of the Old Dark Land?
Yeah.
that would have been Echoes. That was really his second book. Saba Sakana published a book with his essays
Okay.
prior to that. But when Echoes came out, I did get involved. That was a book that the company Kenty published, and I got involved in marketing the book a little bit,
Hmm.
sending out, to bookstores, mailing. In those days, we didn't have internet. At least we didn't have a website, so people would mail in their checks and orders, and I would mail out the books to individuals in bookstores. And that's when I began to get involved a little more deeply. Then I got involved in our Kumbalamba ceremony.
Mm.
Uh, Explain that.
What is Kumbala?
Charles Charles had been going to Senegal to after he made the acquaintance of Mam Fatou Sek.
Hmm.
And while he was in Senegal, he attended a ceremony called the Kumbalamba ceremony, which honors one of the particular Rabs of Indip. And Momsek wanted to bring that ceremony to the United States.
Hmm.
And the two of us and one other person, Dr. Virginia Davis Floyd, got together and made that happen.
Hmm.
Almost in so many. So we I was involved in that, and then I had to step back a little bit because I went back to school to become a nurse. So I was involved in nursing and not really in either the books or his career almost um, till he retired, till I retired. And then um, Charles said, now I'm going to call him Charles. I'm not calling you Wacom. But anyway, Charles said, well, we have this book just languishing around. What's going to happen to it? I said, well, I don't know. Um, and but then finally I realized if I didn't do something, it was just going to be languishing around forever. So I helped to bring that manuscript to a book. And that
Mhm.
became Nile Valley Civilization, 10,000 Year History.
Okay.
And after that one, I said, well, people have been asking about African background to medical science, which had gone out of print. And I realized that you had these three essays that you had written back in the 80s or early 90s. And I said, we could probably make a book out of those. And that's how this most recent book came to be. We, I helped to get that book actually put together. We added a few things, some other things that he had done over the years in traditional medicine. We added a chapter on traditional medicine and talking about Kumbhalamba to actually get that event documented a little better. And so that's kind of the story of how I got involved
Okay.
on this work.
Well, thank you for that. And let me say this. I don't want you to really diminish your work because it takes a lot of energy for Wagon Phi to have done the work that he's done over the decades. And he couldn't do that work and do it efficiently without knowing that his household was secure. So you made it possible. You gave him the peace of mind to go out here and travel, to write, to present, because he knew he was coming. He knew that his household was secure, his children were taken care of, and that he would come back to an environment where he would be loved and appreciated, and his energy would be renewed. So that's why I call you the power behind the throne. I recognize Wagon Five for being the genius that he is, but
Well,
I know he wouldn't be able to do half of what he's done without you and your support. And I want to publicly acknowledge you for that.
well, thank you for that.
You're quite
Thank you
welcome.
for that. Actually, that is true, although the children might have, they're not children now, they're,
Yeah, no.
full adults with their
Hmm.
own opinions, and they might very much have some different opinions about
I'm
how
sure they
together the
do.
house was. And, you know,
Well,
all the love there was
everything is
when,
relative, you know,
yeah,
everything is relative. And it takes
yeah.
relatives to give you different points of view that you never considered before. But let me tell my listeners that you're listening to the Browder File Show on WPFW, and our guests today yeah, are Ellen and Charles Finch. But I want to just take a moment to talk about this station because both of you all mentioned Senegal, Kumalamba, and Ellen, you just recently mentioned Madame Fatou Sek. In the 90s, you brought Madame Sek to Washington, D.C., and she stayed at my house. We did a presentation with her. She did readings for people at my house. I was living on Kansas Avenue in Northwest at that time. And I will never forget, we brought her to WPFW, this radio station, where she was interviewed by Ambrose Lane. And Ambrose asked her how she was able to diagnose her patients. And she said something, it was very simple, but it was also a profound moment for me. She said that she treated women, only women, and primarily women who had psychological disorders. And she said that she would diagnose these women by having drummers form a circle and they would play different rhythms. And the woman would get in the center of the circle and dance to the rhythms. So different rhythms would influence how she danced. And that when the woman passed out, she would take note of the rhythm that was being played, and that would then help her diagnose the patient because each rhythm represented the energy of a different Rob, a different spirit, a different
Right.
ancestor. So
Mhm.
that's as I sat in the studio listening to that interpretation, that's when it really began to dawn on me how powerful African healers are, how powerful African music is, how powerful African drumming is, and that
Mhm.
there's a level of spirit, there's a level of human connections with those things that we can't see that impact us in ways that we can never imagine. And that's the beauty of the work that you all have been doing. That's the beauty of the work that WPFW has been doing. So let me just take a
Okay.
moment and give some shout outs to PFW because this Monday, the 22nd of September, is the fall equinox. the day in which we have 12 hours of daylight, 12 hours at nighttime. And the equinox occurs here in DC at 2:19 p.m. WPFW on the following day, the first full day of the fall equinox, is having a day celebrating the genius and soul of Ray and John, the genius and soul of Ray Charles and John Coltrane on Tuesday, September the 23rd from 5 a.m. until midnight. Why both men on that day? Because September 23rd is their birthday. Ray Charles was born 1930 on September the 23rd. He passed away when he was 73 years old. John Coltrane was born on September the 23rd in 1926, and he passed away when he was 40 years old. So this day of special programming to these two musical giants begins at 5 a.m. with our brother Jamil doing a tribute to John Coltrane, and it ends at midnight with our own Katia Stitt, who will do 2 hours. And the theme for her 2 hour segment is called Cosmic Love, John and Alice Coltrane. So only on this station, WPFW, do you get this type of music? Do you get this type of informative knowledge? And so we're encouraging people to tune in and to listen to the station on those days. You can go to WPFWFM.org to get the full schedule of the day. And it's also a day where the station is doing a fundraiser, so you can contribute. If you like what you hear and want to continue supporting what you hear, you can do that here at this station. And you don't get this anywhere else. So it's important that we understand those jewels in our community that stabilize us. And so let's get back to your latest book. I have a copy of it here, and it is called African Medicine, a Spirit Science Out of the Shadows. So I'd like for you all to explain to me and the audience why you refer to African medicine as a spirit science and why you describe this science as finally coming out of the shadows. What does this title mean?
Well, that's one thing. I forget which year I went to Senegal, but I came deeply involved with traditional healers, especially Mom Fatou Sek, who, when she died, she was over 100 years old when she died. And she was maybe the most prominent traditional healer in all of Senegal. And so she worked with the spirits who they call the Robs. The Senegalese spirits are Robs, and you can't have you cannot have a healing without the intervention of a Rob. And only a Fatu Sek or women, and it's always women, all women like her can, as it were, bring them down into the process. So um, anyway, so that's how we became immersed in traditional African medicine.
Mm-hmm.
And you get ready to say something?
No. Ellen
Yeah.
was about to say something. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I thought about this title a little bit and came up with three reasons why almost poetically Charles named the book Spirit Science Out of the Shadows. One, because of the way life is viewed in Africa on a biophysical level, a mental level, and yes, even animals and plants have a mental level, and also on a spiritual level. All three of those levels are acknowledged and dealt with in dealing with people's health and dis-ease. Another reason is because anyone who practices medicine in Africa is also a priest.
Mm.
You don't have a physician, you have physician priests. So everything is intertwined. Again, Charles explains this very beautifully in his book. Um, and the third reason is what you've already mentioned, that the spirit world is actively involved in healing through possession, through dreams, through communication, through divination, through just innumerable, just actual even conversation with those that are uh, intuitive enough to be able to hear it. So yeah, it's not just, but it's also a science because it's very exact, because it involves any number of herbs and other things. It's it's a science too,
Hmm.
but there's the two things that have to come together,
So
and
they're
it's
not in
out of the
opposition. They're not in opposition. They
no,
complement each other.
absolutely. And
Sure.
it's out of the shadows because no one thought, when you think about medicine, Africa was the last place you thought about
Mm.
any serious medicine going on, particularly people acknowledged Egypt, but they acknowledged Egypt or Kemet, but they call it Egypt separate. They were separate. That was an exception, and then it all died. That's was the general uh, thought about African medicine. They had that one bright spot, and then it
Mm.
just died out. And nobody thought that there was anything going on in the rest of the continent of Africa.
Boy, were they wrong about that.
Mhm.
Um, like has been said, and my wife articulates it even better than I could. And
You write it though in your book.
well, anyway, uh, so just like people will have a religious connection, right, to a spiritual reality, and that also goes for healing. It's like in Africa, you don't get healed until you have connected to that spirit that is in charge of your healing.
Mm.
And there is a difference between healing and curing, at least in my point of view. Curing is a relief of physical distress or physical symptoms. Healing is the union and reunion of mind, body, and spirit
Mm.
to restore the whole person.
Mm. It's a beautiful definition.
Pardon me?
I said that's a beautiful definition.
And you see that in Africa in a way you never would see it in this country,
Hmm.
unless you go among the Native Americans.
Mm.
You
True.
can find it among them.
Hmm.
I've been to a couple of Native American events, and yeah, it's very much the same.
You know what's interesting is, and I'm glad I have the two of you all here together. Both of you all worked in the medical profession and retired from the medical profession. Charles, you were a family physician and an emergency physician until you retired recently. And Ellen, you said you went back to school to become a nurse and you recently retired. So both of you all have been trained in Western medicine, but you're also grounded and rooted in African spiritual traditions, and you blend the two traditions together in your understanding of what it means to be healed, what it means to be whole. And so, this book, your latest book, which is a collaboration between the two. Charles wrote it, but Ellen, you helped to frame the thoughts and you helped to make the book accessible to the general public. So you are as much a part of this book as Wagan Fi is. But what are some of the highlights of this book that you think are important for a reader to take away from this publication?
Who you asking, me or
Well, either one, either one.
her? All right. First of all, I almost got to look at the
Yeah.
table of content here.
No,
Hmm.
look on the back
Okay, look on the back.
right here.
Oh, yeah. Do you mind if I read this?
Of course, read it, please.
Okay. Uh, Concepts that Dr. Finch discusses in this work. Medical traditions and principles originating in ancient Egypt and the Nile Valley are connected to those in other parts of Africa.
Mm,
You see, even now, most people in the world don't think of Egypt in terms of Africa.
yeah.
They think it's a world apart.
Hmm.
And nothing could be further from the truth.
And that was, if I'm not mistaken, that was one of the primary philosophies and teachings of Sheikh Anta Diop. He talked about the cultural
Yeah,
unity of Black Africa.
that's it.
Mhm.
Cultural unity of Black Africa. He sure does. Sheikh Anta Diop. It's a name to remember. Last name spelled Diop and pronounced Jope. Okay? Though there are different healing traditions that continue to flourish among the peoples of Africa, there are similarities among them. African medicine is closely tied to religion. African priest physicians practice in realms that modern science has yet to understand. And so healing is a kind of a religious experience, you might say.
Okay.
Now, the thing is, and I had this happen, I had to do this twice. I was in Senegal and it was determined that I needed a healing intervention. And you know what they did? They sat me on a bull, on a bull.
Hmm.
And I didn't know it until it happened. That bull had to be sacrificed with me sitting on it.
Hmm.
That bull was giving its life for for its energy to come into me.
Mm.
And that happened twice. Um, and sacrifice is fundamental to African practice. I'm not saying they sacrifice every time or everything, but it's there.
So
And it
what's the
was certainly
concept behind sacrifice? Why would one sacrifice an animal, a bull in your instance? What is the spiritual connection?
it's a way because the spirit of the bull enters you and you become that bull,
Mm.
and that bull becomes you.
Hmm.
Yeah, it works both ways. That bull is taking on what you need to let go of.
Okay.
And so, like I said, I sat on that bull twice.
And the vehicle for that happening is the blood.
Yeah,
Mm.
blood. Oh, actually, yeah, glad she mentioned that because blood is the medium of life. And so you can't do anything of any real significance in Africa without without bringing blood into the process.
Hmm.
And that certainly happened on the two occasions where I was sat on the bull,
Hmm.
and
So
I don't know what else to say about it.
let's provide some concept, some context for that because uh Wygarn, you went to Yale. You went to an exclusive medical school, so you are highly regarded in Western medicine. Yet you also have your hand, have your foot, have a part of your consciousness connected to traditional African medicine, which acknowledges spirit and which believes in using animal sacrifices in order to facilitate a healing. How do you, as a Western trained physician, reconcile these two apparently different modes of reality and different modes of healing?
I don't think of them. I don't think of them as different.
Okay.
Okay. Uh, although I think of the African approach as more holistic. Is that the word I want?
Okay.
And because it touches all the parts, it touches the parts of the human person that Western medicine ignores.
Hmm.
Now, I don't try to make a thing about that among my medical colleagues, et cetera. I mean, they are entitled to their opinion. They were trained just like I was, and they can go anywhere they want with it.
Hmm.
Some of them have listened to me, some of them.
Yeah, sure.
But let
You
me
know,
tell
and
you, let me just finish this.
uh-huh.
You're not going to ever achieve healing in America
Mm.
until you bring that spiritual element and the function of blood into it. And I don't know if Western medicine will ever get there.
Mhm.
So uh, that's the reason why I have maintained my connection to African traditional healing.
Sure.
Better word.
You know,
Uh,
it's interesting when you first introduced me to Madame Fatou, one of the things that was said in introducing her, and she speaks no English, but she has this profound understanding of the spirit world. One of the things that was often mentioned as she was introduced was that, as you said, she was one of the foremost healers in the country of Senegal, and that there were French physicians, French psychologists, and psychiatrists who sat at her feet in order to understand her healing techniques. So, there is something to this. The West may not fully understand it, but they're curious.
but
They
they're
know.
not trying to, wait a minute, and too many of them are not trying to understand it, Karak.
Okay.
But go ahead, go ahead.
No, but there are curious souls such as yourselves who know that there is a connection, and you're not allowing conventional Western medical thought prevent you from investigating the unknown and then facilitating a healing, not a curing, based on bringing this knowledge into your practices. So that's admirable, and you all are again to be acknowledged for not only having done that work, but now writing about it, documenting it in your publications, so that people in general can know, and hopefully you can begin to impress some medical students, so that they can think beyond the limits of traditional Western medical indoctrination and begin to explore Africa as viewed from an African centered perspective that includes the body, the mind, and the spirit. That's important.
May I ask you a question? Yeah. Is sacrifice always necessary? Because some people may be wondering that.
Okay, now that's a good
Yes,
question.
yes, yes, it
Sacrifice is
is.
always necessary. So, Ellen,
Because
you want to add? I can look at you and tell you want to elaborate on that. So please do. Yeah,
But
please do.
does it have to be um, an animal?
what else would it be?
Well, you can sometimes it's acceptable to do an offering for a
Yeah,
particular
it is.
uh, rob or deity, an offering of fruit,
Mhm.
flowers. Um,
Honey,
mhm,
fly
mhm.
fire. I know you will agree with honey. Mama Wata
Um,
always loves some honey, right?
exactly.
Okay.
There's, but it is true that we do talk about exchange of energy here and
Mm-hmm.
something that's happening at the spiritual level. It's
Mm-hmm.
not about taking medicine
Mm-hmm.
that
Mm-hmm.
that there's something a little more that's going on.
So
So, excuse me?
no, Ellen, you're opening
Oh,
up another level of conversation.
oh,
That
oh,
no, that's good. That's great. I want to have that conversation if you all are willing to give me an extra 10 or 15 minutes.
Of course.
Because
You wait a minute. You are Karakamoon router.
within
You take how many minutes that you going to take?
within let you shouldn't have said that now. I want to take I'm not going to exploit you, but I will take advantage of it. But we're coming on the end of our show, so I've got 3 more minutes left in the show. But if you are willing to just give me a few more minutes, because I do want to explore that, Ellen, because I felt the same way regarding sacrifices, and I've seen a lot of people engage in sacrifices, cows and goats and chickens, but I've always felt that there's more to it than just the animal sacrifice, and so that food adds a dimension, honey, flowers. So we're talking about different types of offerings that are done um, in order to gain access to different types of spirits, in order to facilitate different types of healings. So not all healing requires surgery, radical surgery, or transplants. Sometimes it's a it's a it's a medication, it's a pill, it's an herb that does bring about the changes. So I want to talk about that briefly, but I've got to wind down my show, this segment of the show. But I want you all to hold on, because one of the things that we have the benefit of doing is taking exciting conversations into the overflow room. So if you all can give me an extra 10 or 15 minutes, we'll go into the overflow room and continue this conversation. And I would have fulfilled my obligations here on the Browder File show. So,
Karak,
yes,
Karak,
sir.
I'm retired. I ain't got nothing but time.
But thank you for having us today,
Well,
Karak. It's been
I would like to say people that I know who have retired appear to be busier in retirement than when they were working. Why is that? Why is that? Because you're now working for yourself. You're now doing what you love. So before I let you go, and you got 30 seconds, where can people get your book? They can go to your website. What's the website?
website is charlessfinch.com.
Okay.
You can also get it at Lucina BKS, lucinabks.com.
Okay.
There's
And then here in DC, they can get it from
in DC,
Sankofa,
Everyone's Place
in
and Sankofa
Baltimore.
Video.
Yep.
And there's one more website called African Djele, AfricanDjeli,
Okay.
AfricanDjele.com.
Okay, fantastic. Well, listen, my guests today have been Ellen and Charles Finch, two lovely people. I love you all. You all have committed yourself to study, to healing, to knowledge, and to sharing information that helps to make us better people. And I'm proud to know you. I'm honored to have had you on my show, and I want you all to hold on. But I want you, the listeners, to make it a point to listen to WPFW throughout the rest of this week, throughout the rest of this month, but especially on Tuesday, the 23rd, where WPFW will celebrate the genius plus soul equals Ray and John. Wonderful music, powerful music. And that's the reason why this station is here, to give you something you won't find anywhere else. So stay locked in to WPFW. This is Tony Browder with the Browder File Show. Thanking you so much. And I will see you all next week. Peace. All right. So we are now off the air. We can come back to our interview. All right. So, Ellen, I do appreciate you raising that point regarding the sacrifices, because as I think in terms of images carved on the walls of temples, images that are carved in Karakamin's tomb, especially around the spirit door at the western part of Karakamin's tomb, we have an image of Assar in a niche, and around Assar are carved images of priests bringing offerings to him.
You're not talking to an audience. I was going to say.
No, I am, because this is going to be on the
Okay, well,
YouTube
tell them
channel.
who Assar is.
Oh, Assar is known. Assar is the Lord of resurrection. Assar is the person for whom the spirit of every person on Judgment Day has to stand before Assar on the day of judgment, and it's Assar who determines the quality of their next incarnation. Yes, in the Nile Valley, they understood that we
Yeah,
don't.
but what are people most likely to know him by name?
They know him better by his Greek name, Osiris.
Cyrus.
And one of the reasons why I said that Ellen is the power behind the throne is that on these images, we see Assar sitting on his throne, but behind him is his wife, Aset, who is also known as Isis. And the symbol for Aset is an egg and a throne. She is the power behind the throne, and she is the vessel through which new life comes into the world. So our African ancestors understood that a man can't do nothing without a woman. And if you have a good woman by your side, she'll always have your back. And speaking of back, it was Aset who was responsible for helping to reformulate the spine, the backbone of Assar. So yeah, Ellen, you carry that title graciously. You've earned
Oh,
it. But especially to the question that you raised about the offering, the sacrifice. So in Karakamin's tomb, his temple tomb, around his spirit door, the portal into the ancestral realm, which European Egyptologists refer to as a false door, but it's actually a portal to the spiritual dimension. We have priests who say words to appeal to Assar, but they also bring offerings of meat, beer, wine, bread, grapes, and fowls. They bring these offerings to Assar so that he will receive these offerings, listen to your prayers, and extend his hand from the spiritual world into the physical world to resolve problems, to answer questions, and to facilitate healings. So this stuff is real, and if people don't understand it, then shame on them,
yes.
you
Yeah,
know.
but the thing is, you think about, okay, Karak, who is after Osiris was killed by his jealous brother Set,
Hmm.
who resurrected him?
Well, it was a set who found the scattered pieces of his body and who
Okay.
literally remembered her husband and then set in motion the process for mummification. And I use that word in air quotes, that was maintained in Kemet for over 3,000 years. She set the standard. And because of the fact it took her 70 days to find the missing parts of her husband's body, to prepare his body for burial, that 70 days became the process of mummifications in Kemet for the next 3,000 years. So that's the spirit. But well, God, I want to ask you a question with regards to Mami Wata, who is another female spirit. And one of the rituals that you do at the Temple of Dendera, the temple that's dedicated to Het Heru or Hathor, you make it a point to always pour honey in the space where the sacred lake was, at her temple, at her site. Why honey? Who is Mama Wata, and what is her connection with Het Heru
Okay.
or Hathor?
Because honey is what you feed the goddesses with, so to
Mhm.
speak, you know.
Okay.
Um, and in fact, if you're trying to become like a goddess, you take in honey. All right, that's number
Hmm.
one. Now, you asked me something about Het Heru.
Well,
What's
isn't
the
Het Heru associated with Mami Wata or
Yes,
Hathor?
Mami Wata is the goddess of the ocean in among the people of Benin. Used to be called Dahomey, and yes, she is the goddess of all goddesses, but she's the goddess of the waters, especially the oceanic waters,
Hmm.
and probably the most powerful female deity there is, if not the most powerful deity.
Mm.
And her name, Mami, like mama, and Wata, water, mother of the waters.
Mm.
Uh, and that the waters, especially the ocean, were a very almost supremely powerful element
Yes.
in the thinking and the lives of Africans generally and the people of Kemet or Egypt in particular.
Hmm.
So I don't know what else to say.
Well,
Uh,
I got a question for you then. I want you to put on your Western trained medical hat for a minute. And let's talk about honey because I have read that honey was found in King Tut's tomb and that honey was used in Kemet to treat wounds because bacteria does not grow in honey. Is that correct?
Honey was used in both. That's the thing about honey. It had multiple applications because it could be used as a healing balm, as you're suggesting,
Mm-hmm.
but it was also taken by mouth. It was
Mm-hmm.
also eaten or ingested. And I don't know, honey has always had a almost a sacred a sacred aspect in ancient Kemet, ancient Egypt, you know.
Yeah.
Uh,
You know, now that you mention it, one of the symbols associated with Kemet, associated with kingship in Kemet, was the bee,
bee.
right?
It was. That's
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
The honeybee. Not
absolutely.
just a bee, the honeybee.
The honey, okay, the honeybee. And if I'm not mistaken, when Napoleon came to Egypt in 1798 and began to acquaint himself with some of the knowledge of these African people, when he became the emperor of France, he then used the bee as a symbol of his rulership, having gotten that information from Egypt.
Well, that I didn't know, or at least if
Okay.
I knew it, I forgot it.
Hmm.
No, I didn't know that, Karak.
Well, I'd
Oh.
like to know that I can impress my good friend Wagan
You,
Fi.
you don't have to work at press. You press me anyway, no matter what, what the situation is. So, what
So
can I
look,
say?
I don't want to keep you all too late, but is there something else you want to share about your book or about your work or any other works that you have in the pipeline that we can look forward to?
I don't think I have anything in the pipeline. Ellen, could you just hand me the book for just a second? I'm gonna look very quickly in the table of contents here
Okay.
to
Well,
see if
Ellen,
there's
I
any.
do know while Wagan is looking, I do remember a conversation somewhere where there was conversation about a fifth book. A fifth book, right? You've got some
Um,
extra materials lingering on a shelf or on a desk in a drawer somewhere that will comprise a fifth book. Am I hallucinating
no,
or
you're
something?
not.
I'm
No,
not. Okay.
you're
Thank you.
not. Um, that will take some time
Uh-huh.
and some work,
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh.
some
Mm-hmm.
digging,
Well,
literal digging. But one of the things that's happened over the years, that's one of the challenges that I had that, uh, well, really we both faced, but I really had to take it on with this book was that the original essays, as Charles has already mentioned, were done in the 80s, and I think the last one was 89 or
something like that.
the 1990, that would have been the latest, 1990.
Mm-hmm.
But he continued to be asked to speak on that topic. And whenever he spoke, he would throw in new stuff. He kept researching and finding new material to expand this topic, even from the original essays. But it was never written in a book together. There's a little bit of it in a little pamphlet we put out called At the Birth of Science and Technology. There's a little bit in there.
Mm-hmm.
But mostly was in his PowerPoints that he lectured on. So he would, so that was a challenge, taking that material from his PowerPoints, his lectures, and incorporating that into the essays that the original essays.
Okay.
That was a little bit of a challenge. So in the process of just looking through uh, some of the things he'd written in the past, I said, wow, he has this stuff and this stuff. And one of the other important points that he didn't mention, we didn't haven't mentioned, is about the fact that Hippocrates is the given the title the father of medicine, and um, Charles spends a lot of time refuting that in a couple of the essays. Uh,
And Hippocrates never called himself that, by the way.
right. That was the title that was.
That's one thing I should say. Um, the Greeks almost never claimed for themselves what had originated in Egypt.
Mm-hmm.
They never tried to supersede the Egyptians or tried to pretend that what was had really come out of Egypt or Kemet was something that was theirs.
Okay.
And they had nothing but the highest reverence for Egyptian civilization, science, um, mathematics, and knowledge. So now that's the thing about the Greeks. You can't, you give them credit because uh, they gave credit where credit was due.
Okay.
And they knew where their civilization came from, and they said it.
Hmm. Yeah, it was only later, like within the past 200 years, that folk had to rewrite history, write Africans out of
Yeah.
history, and then attribute it to people who were never there. So, yeah, uh,
Right.
yeah. But Wagan, you were going to look at the book to reference something. Uh,
Well, let me just reference the fact that the Hippocratic Oath, uh, Charles wrote his own version of the
Oh,
Hippocratic Oath,
yeah,
which we have put into the book.
I wanted to ask
Called
you. That was one of the
the
questions I had for
it's
you. So if you could
yeah,
speak to
called
that,
the Oath of
please.
Sunnu. And
Oath of Sunnu. Why Sunnu? Sunnu was the ancient Egyptian name
right.
for the physician.
Sunu. Okay.
And so, uh, yeah, I
Does the word
composed it.
Sunu have a specific meaning in Kemet? Or does that?
Physician.
Oh, okay. Okay, just physician. Got it.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And so, yeah. You want me to read the Oath of Sunnu?
Why
Or
not? I
maybe,
mean,
yeah, but you maybe if you have this book, you can find it in the book.
well, I have the book, but you want to sell the book to people who don't have it. So why don't you give our listeners and our viewers some highlights? What prompted you to write an African oath for physicians? And
Oh,
then,
because you see, the oath, huh?
I thought Malimo asked you to do it.
Yeah, I think maybe he did. Malimu Imara.
mhm,
Uh, yeah, he put it in my mind to do it
okay.
because all this time, uh, physicians around the world were relying on the Hippocratic Oath
Hmm.
to kind of, you know, indicate their commitment to the healing art.
Hmm.
But there was something, this was the Oath of Sunnu.
You're reading from page
This April
191.
30th, 19. I didn't realize it went back
Hmm.
uh, to 1985. Jeez.
You've been doing this for a
Okay, and then
long
let me just,
time, brother.
I'm gonna read this much. I won't go too much farther on it.
Okay.
Uh, yeah, the Oath of Sunnu was drafted at the specific request of Dr. Mwalimu Imara, Director of Human Values and Medicine at Morehouse School of Medicine, who rightly perceived that medical students of African descent should be able to reach back into their antiquity and pull forth something that will tie them to the ever living stream of their history, and inspire them as physicians. Okay, I'm just going to read these. I call them the 12 Testaments of the Physician. Life, strength, health. 1, I will not do harm. Number 2, I will not spare myself to alleviate pain. 3, I will not defraud the sufferer. 4, I will not suffer myself uncleanliness of body or person, or spirit, of the body or spirit. 5, I will not mock the blind. 6, I will not injure the lame. 7, I will not sneer at the helpless of mind.
Mm.
8, I will not profane the knowledge of the house of life. 9, I will not defile the healing balm. 10, I will not cease to make light the burden of the dying.
Mm.
11, I will not refuse ministrations to the poor. Now that's a big one here in America.
Sure.
Huge,
Hmm.
huge. 12, I will not stir up strife between myself and my fellow physicians.
Now you
But number
mentioned number
11, I
eight.
think, is really critical even for our own time.
Number eight. I would not.
You don't ever deprive anyone, no
Mm.
matter what their circumstance of life,
Hmm.
of the full measure of healing of medical intervention as they need it.
I wish that was practiced in hospitals to
Yes,
this day. We may have a better quality of health. Let me go back to item number eight. I would not profane the knowledge of the house of life. What is the house of life?
the house of life. was it was the temple. Jeez. Huh. Why am I having a hard time
It
to?
was a lot. It was a lot of things, right?
Yeah,
All right, so that it was a place where physicians were trained,
that's right. There you have it.
but
Among other things, yes.
but that training included um spiritual training, you know,
Physicians
and
were priests.
right,
Mm-hmm. Yep,
right.
absolutely.
And then also people came in to be treated.
Oh yeah.
So
And not only just in Egypt, they came from Greece, what
Yeah.
became Rome.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I'm trying to think, what is now called Syria. They came from all over.
Mm-hmm. And the other thing I remember, Wagan, you shared with me years ago in one of your PowerPoint presentations, you referenced a book that was written in French called Paths from the Nile that
Yeah,
documented the
the chemin du
migration.
Nil. Mhm.
Chemin du
Yeah.
Nil. Yeah.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm. That documented the migrations of Africans from the Nile Valley into the West, right?
Right.
6 migrations, and you and
In
you you
Harlem.
you you documented that in your last book, Nile Valley Civilization: A 10,000-Year History. But that's so important that we understand that Africans did not restrict their learning, their teachings, to just the Nile Valley. They spread to the west, and then I also have been reading some sources. There were also migrations of people from the west into the Nile Valley. So there was this constant exchange of knowledge from south to north, and from east to west, and west to east.
Well, what was ancient Egypt's sacred land?
Up south,
There you
um,
go.
yep,
You
up
said it.
south. Absolutely. Well, look,
And
I've got one more question I want to put to you, and it's not so much a question, it's a memory that I want to evoke, and then I'll let you guys go. I want you to share your thoughts on a glorious weekend that occurred in Washington D.C. at Crampton Auditorium at Howard University, the weekend of January the 22nd and 24th, 1993, when we had the Listervelt Middleton tribute. We
mm,
worked with you, Rabia, and Yusuf Al Nur, and myself, helped to bring together this gathering of scholars and the community to honor Brother Listervelt 3 years before he transitioned. So, give me some thoughts and reflections on that.
well, Listervelt, in a lot of ways, he made it possible for Black people, let's talk about Black people in America, in ways that they never had before, to receive this information that is now in my book, uh, African Medicine, Spirit Science Out of the Shadows. Because I
Mm,
was actually talking and lecturing on those matters long before the book came out. And Listervelt uh, created um, opportunities for me to actually present on that subject. And I don't know what else to say. I mean, he was very, very critical because of the way he was able to facilitate the spread of that knowledge
hmm
in his own way.
Yeah. And for those who are watching who don't remember Listervelt Middleton, he was a host of a program called For the People that aired in Columbia, South Carolina Educational Television. And he had all of the greats, all of the giants. And one of the special programs he had was a interview with Sheikh Anta. That was
Yes, it did.
remarkable at that
Yes, it did.
time. And his show aired here in DC 3 times a week on Howard's TV station. So when Listervelt was diagnosed with um, myeloma, was it? I think it
I
was,
don't remember.
yeah, I think it was myeloma. And was getting he wound up getting stem cell transfusions, and we organized this tribute at Howard as a fundraiser for him. And what I recall, that last day, that Sunday afternoon, Dr. Welsing's sister, Lauren Crest Love, who was actually one of the organizers and founders of radio station WPFW, where we did our interview, she went to the microphone and she went to church with that microphone and encouraged people to put money in the hats that were being passed. And that afternoon, we collected $40,000.
Really?
Forty
I
thousand
remember.
dollars. We took that money in a paper bag to Listervelt's in-laws house. They lived in DC, I think Southeast DC, and gave that bag to Listervelt that evening. He opened it up, saw that money, and just threw it. He was so happy,
Wow.
man. That was a glorious moment. That was a magnificent moment that I will cherish forever, man. And thank you for helping to make that happen. So these are memories that we have to keep talking about, because there's um, a lot of young folk and too many older folk who don't know anything at all about this. And if we don't talk about these things, this history, these experiences, they will never know. And as we are unfortunately experiencing a time of the heightened erasure of African history and culture, we need this
You know
information to
what,
come out
Karak?
more than ever before.
I don't even worry about it. Because I
Okay.
said, no, you can't erase it. You can do
Well,
what you
true.
want to. You don't want to. It'll come back and we will
Hmm.
recover it and we will take it up further. And
Yes,
so I don't
indeed.
even get mad anymore.
Okay.
I don't get mad at what white people do. They're always, that's who they are.
Yes, sir.
You
Yes,
know, we
sir.
can't, and so I let them be who they are
Hmm.
because they will pay the price
Hmm.
for what they've done. Think about what they've done to black people. We know what they did to black people.
Yeah.
And I think about this every day. What did they do to the American Indian?
Yeah.
They took everything away from him.
Hmm.
You know, they say, I forget where I got this information from. It was estimated that in 1776, at the dawn of the American Revolution, there were 20 million Africans. No, let me get this right.
American Indians.
No, no, 20 million Indians, American Indians
Hmm.
in America. By 1891, that number had dropped down to 1 million.
Wow.
You say yourself, there's a price to be paid for that. That's genocide. I mean, real genocide.
Sure.
And I don't know what else to say about it.
Okay. Well, I think the most important thing that can be said or should be said is that we have to remember who we are. We have to remember that we have survived the Maafa. We have
Oh
survived
yeah.
relentless efforts to destroy us here and destroy the continent, but we are still here. And as you said, we're not going anywhere. We're going to
No.
come back stronger than ever before. And that ties into my opening comments. We have been here before, which I think is one of the reasons why we're here now. And the work that we're doing now, it will pay dividends with the work that we would do in the lifetimes to come. That's what helps get me through these challenging times. And as you have often said, Wagan, in helping me to get my mind straight, that we tend to think of time from a Western context, 100 years or 500 years. That's nothing in the overall
Yeah.
span of time. We need to be thinking in terms of 10,000 years, great years.
Well, I mean, that's what when when they started really looking at the ages of Sphinx.
Hmm.
What was that man's name? I'm forgetting his name.
Robert Schoch did the
Yeah,
research. Robert
there were
Schoch.
two of them, but I can't remember.
Robert Schoch and John Anthony
No,
West, and Robert
Excuse
Bauval
me.
and Thomas Brophy and that whole crew who came to the Nile Valley 2 conference in Atlanta. Yeah.
And all they did was looking at the layers of clay surrounding the Sphinx,
Hmm.
and they realized that that was a time those were
Mm.
time levels
Mm.
of time.
Yeah.
And so when you go down to uh, the base of the Sphinx, that's when the Sphinx time on this earth begins. And you can actually tell what that time frame was, all the way up to where we are now.
Hmm.
And that's how they knew that the Sphinx could not be any younger than 12,000 years.
Amazing. So, we have an incredible future that's awaiting us. And that future is going to be shaped by our being able to recover the memories of the past. So this
Yeah,
work is so
that's serious business, Karak.
absolutely.
That's serious business. And so those of us who are doing it, we just gotta keep at it. We can't get
Absolutely.
all frustrated and uh, about all the barriers that are put in front of us, all the ways in which their history is being negated, misread, misused, lied about.
Hmm.
Uh, it's there, and you know what? See, that's the other thing, Karak. That's one thing I know. I found out over the years. You know who walks among us?
Ooh.
The African gods and goddesses.
Hmm.
They're not up there somewhere. They walk among us. Now we don't know them. That's us. That's all. That's on us.
Hmm.
But they walk among us. And if you listen to them carefully and you sit down and ask them, they'll talk to you.
Hmm.
Talk to me.
Hmm. Absolutely.
And only because I ask them to.
You extend an invitation, you let them know that they're welcome. You leave them offerings, and they come,
And they
and
come
they
all
come.
right.
All right.
Because
Well,
they're,
look.
they
Hmm.
don't, uh, you think we are unhappy about our history.
Ah, mm,
Just think about what they think about what's been done to us.
sure.
You know, somebody said, when the time comes for the reckoning to be activated, and the way I'm just quoting what was said. Who
Hmm.
will want to be a white man in America?
Oh, Lord have mercy. I'm sure that will be the time when everybody will want to be black, right? Want to
Yeah.
claim their African identity. Well, look, I want to thank you two so very much for your time. I hope that you found this to be enlightening and good use of your time, and I appreciate you both so much. Thank you.
and you,
Thank you.
and you, Karak.
Okay.
Yes, correct.
Absolutely.
Because that's the thing. I've watched you become, you know, who is it says I am somebody? Who is that?
Jesse.
Uh, huh?
Jesse Jackson.
Yeah, I've watched you become somebody when it comes to ancient African history, Kemet, et cetera, et cetera. I've watched it happen
Okay.
right in front of my eyes. From when you were just sitting there in the audience at the first Nile Valley Conference,
Hmm.
and all these speakers were coming on and saying what they were saying, and you were there wide-eyed, just looking and listening. I
Well,
saw you.
okay, okay. Well, I appreciate the fact that I have had good teachers and still have good teachers. And if nothing else, I'm a good learner.
Uh-huh.
Hmm.
That
So
you are.
thank you all so much.
Okay, Karak, we'll
Have a
talk
good
again soon.
evening, and we'll talk
We,
soon, okay?
we need to talk soon with Karak. We can't go months and not talk. We can't do that anymore.
Okay,
You know, we really
absolutely.
And there are other people we need to bring along.
True. Absolutely.
We
Absolutely.
need to bring the next Karakamoons to, you know,
That's part of what I'm working on, preparing, the next generation, those who are in their 30s and 40s who have a genuine interest in this information, and more importantly, have the capacity to do the work. A lot of people are interested, but they don't have the stick-to-itiveness. They aren't disciplined, and we need to be about the business of training them to follow in our footsteps.
and let me just leave this last thought. I've already mentioned it.
Yes, sir.
The gods and the goddesses, that's what people don't do. They never make reference to the goddesses.
Mm-hmm.
They are among us.
Mm-hmm. And and I'll close on this. Let me get the last word. It's my show. I want to have the last word. So what I'm encouraging people to do is what Sammy Moore did in the film Sinners with Ryan Coogler, with that juke joint scene. When he performed that song and he called down the ancestors and he literally beckoned them, somebody take me in your arms tonight. He called the ancestors. They came down and they possessed everybody in that space and changed the energy. That's the power that we've always had. That's the power that we need to use now more than any other point in time in our lives. So with that, I would say, Ashe, thank you all
Ashe.
so very much. I love you.
Thank you.
And I look forward to talking with you all soon.
Of course, Karak.
Okay.
I can hardly wait.
Okay. All right. Good night.
Until
Mhm.
All right. So recording stop.
Yep,
No, I
I'm
know. I
stopping
don't
it
think
now.